How much would you pay to not look like David Beckham? One man paid $26,000, and why don't you have a look and listen to what happened?
Oh, come on!
So he wanted to look like David Beckham?
That was his goal.
Because it's going to be very hard for you to look like him.
Like, obviously, I know I don't look like him, you know what I mean? I'm not that stupid. But I got a long way to go to get my goals to look like him.
How close do you reckon you're going to be able to get?
I don't know, but it's easy, like another 30 grand.
So he wants to spend 30 grand in British pounds, which is the equivalent of $39,000 American, approximately.
The dollar is strong.
He is also unemployed.
Oh no, that's the problem.
Well, he wants to spend... in the cockney, what does he stand when he's fucking?
I don't understand
How much
what you're
does it
saying.
cost to make me look like a soccer ball?
I mean, I'm not stupid.
I'm not stupid. I'm just slow.
So he's said
Bend it. A bit of lead paint was as a kid.
he feels happy and amazing about himself, and this is the best place he's ever been in the past year.
Oh,
that's good. I'm fine with that.
He's pretty young. He's 19 years old. I didn't say his name. His name is Jack Johnson, not the one that makes banana pancakes. Yeah, I mean, we also know. Remember we had this other man, this is a Pop Trigger story, by the way, Brett, so I hope you'll chime in.
Yeah.
There was a 33-year-old man who spent $100,000 to look like Justin Bieber. He did end up, I believe, dying. I don't remember what the causes were.
Yeah, that guy, I don't remember what his causes were. I know there was a person named also sent a...
I think he had a case of terminal cuteness.
Too cute. He died from cute. Celso Santabanes was another person who paid a lot more than that over his lifetime to look like a literal Ken doll.
Yes.
Oh, that guy.
He didn't look like a Ken doll. He died of an unrelated blood cancer.
He died as well, huh?
He died. He was
No, all
20.
these things.
It's really sad, but...
First of all, the surgery puts them in danger, and then also, I listened to this entire interview they had with Mr. Johnson, 9 minutes or so. They asked him 7 different times, so you should probably work on yourself because it's obvious that you're not happy. He talked about how he wants to be on the A-list. He wants to hang out with Drake, Beyonce, Nicki Minaj.
That's not going to happen by just looking
There's
like
a thing.
a celebrity.
And then once they said that to him, he goes, I know, I just want that. So there's a something isn't linking up. He doesn't understand how this all works. And they said, so what is your talent once you have a look that you think you need to have to then be on the A-list? And he said, I don't really know. He just, again, he needs to get help. And then so I think the Justin Bieber guy died eventually because he had a drug overdose. So he wasn't happy still.
I mean,
it's
he
not
sounds
gonna work.
exactly like Scott Baio when he got in show business. What's your talent? I don't know.
Or the people he wants to hang out with. He wants to hang out with Kim Kardashian. He wants to be on that A-list. What's their talent? Nothing. Finding creative ways to get people to talk about them.
Huh?
And this is a very creative way to get people to talk about you.
But they're going to talk bad about him.
Positive. And I don't mean like in the, I have a sex tape way. I mean like this is very deeply sad and you have issues that need to be addressed instead of just spending tens of thousands of dollars you don't have.
Right. I watched the season finale of Botched by Nature the other day.
What's that?
Botched by Nature is a show that started as Botched, which is these 2 plastic surgeons correct plastic surgery gone wrong. So botched, they go to botched plastic surgery patients and say, here, let's fix you. Botched by nature is people who were born with deformities. So there was this woman who her breast tissue just never developed. She had a kid, she couldn't breastfeed the kid, she was sad. And so she said, listen, I just don't feel confident in my body. And if I could change this one thing, I'm pretty sure I would just be happier. I'd feel like a woman. Now that's like a place where you need to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, is the answer really plastic surgery? Or is plastic surgery just something you've made up as a way to make you feel better, even though there is a much bigger problem going on? Now, for someone who never had breast tissue, there's another woman who had like a growth in her face and she wanted it to go away. Yeah, maybe the answer for her is plastic surgery to get it to go away so she can look how she always wanted to. But a lot of people, I feel like they say, it's just this one thing I want to change. And if that thing is to look more like David Beckham, I'd say it's more suspicious than if it was,
I want to fix whatever problems I have so I can look what I think is normal or the baseline of how I should look. Yeah, there definitely are, I guess, different types of people who are looking for plastic surgery, and some of them this is never going to fix what you feel is wrong. It's just going to keep going and going and going until you're in debt, you're depressed. I don't know what's going to happen. You could OD in a hotel room.
There's layers of this. We talked about the 30 grand more he wants to spend. He's already spent 19,000 pounds for what this isn't him with no surgery on that show. He's done his teeth, his lips, his eyebrows, his chin. He's did skin tanning injections. I don't know what that is.
What is a tanning injection?
Tattoo, I feel? Like a tattoo?
Like it injects and it fills your skin. I don't know, because obviously your skin is a huge organ. But I don't know or he's done gastric bypass. So all these things he wants, and he said he tried working out. He's tried every diet, and then that doesn't work. So even after the gastric bypass sets in or whatever weight loss comes of that, he said, then I'll still do the gym. So again, I don't know. It's hard to trust everything he said, because then, again, he's not making much sense with what he said is the ultimate outcome. Just look like David Beckham, and that's it.
It's definitely not my place to judge him. I'm going to do it, though.
Okay.
Like, I can't help myself from that, but it's just know that it's not my place to judge him. What I would like to say is to people, we do this on Pop Trigger a lot, like there's people who see this story and might say, listen, maybe I could get plastic surgery. I'm not in that category. Maybe I want to change this one thing about myself. But you do need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, is this really going to solve my problems? There's another person, Nanette Hammond, who you should look up, who spent $500,000 to look like Barbie.
Oh yeah, she took out all ribs and stuff, right?
Took her out ribs.
Yeah.
People are taking out ribs, and you ask yourself,
What doctor will do that? What doctor will go, I'll take your frickin' rib out? Who does that? What kind of doctor does that?
Maybe not board accredited.
Board accredited, sure. Someone who can look at it and say, listen, a lot of folks will look at you. A lot of plastic surgeons will look at you and say, no, I'm not going to do that, and here's why. But there's going to be a plastic surgeon out there who will uphold the Hippocratic Oath and be like, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to certainly hurt you. It's definitely risky. You're putting yourself out there for a lot of strange complications. There's a reason that everyone has this many ribs. But I'm going to do it because you're paying me. And I'm sure the general plastic surgery community looks down on that person and tries to get them not to do it. But there's folks like this who will go find someone to do it.
And you know what? I'm gonna get hair plugs and some things, and it just nothing's gonna make. It's not gonna change the fact that my dick is so small it has a fingernail.
Maybe.
And that's just the way I have to accept it.
Young Turks membership.
I can't tell you how good that feels and how good that tastes.
Find out. TYTnetwork.com/join.